If you were to put someone out in nature to fend for themselves, chances are they wouldn't survive for long. And this is true for all animals. Animals survive these environments because they have experienced elders who show them how to survive. And their schooling begins at a young age. Animals must learn how to solve the many challenges to survival. And the first challenge is getting enough to eat every day. Throughout the changing seasons, individuals have to know which foods are available and where during different times of the year. And this requires learning from experienced individuals who have lived in that environment for many generations. Food culture depends on the environment. And food traditions vary between different groups. Within a species, different groups live in different environments, which means their food culture varies. But even within the same environment, different groups within the same species have different diets and ecological niches. A primary characteristic of the ecological niche involves exploitation of food. Youngsters learn foraging niches from parents or elders early in life, which helps them avoid excessive overlap with the foraging niches of competing species. Evidence of teaching in wild birds may be the food calls uttered by parents when arriving with food to the nestlings, and when foraging on preferable food items with the offspring after leaving the nest. Researchers proved that young birds learn their foraging niche by transferring the eggs of blue-tip birds to the nests of great-tip birds, and vice versa. They showed that early learning causes a shift in the feeding niche in the direction of the foster species, and that this shift lasts for life. Both species change their feeding niches. The study shows that cultural transmission through early learning is fundamental to the realization of ecological niches, and suggests a mechanism to explain learned habitat preference. For a naive individual confronted with an array of novel foods, determining the nutritional value of unfamiliar foods can be challenging. Parents teach their young how to eat the most nutritious foods. Mother hens will pick up different foods and drop them at her chicks' feet while making food-related calls, a behavior known as tidbitting. Researchers investigated whether the multimodal display of food calling and tidbitting biases chicks' intake of foods of different nutrient content via social learning. They observed 100 instances of hen food calling to 6 plant species. The relative proportion of each plant species in the chick's diet was significantly and positively related to the proportion of food calls associated with that plant species. Plant species that elicited food calls by hens had significantly more protein. Chicks of hens that often uttered calls consumed diets significantly higher in protein than did chicks of hens that rarely called. Preferences were maintained as chicks became older and foraged further from their mothers. Socially acquired information plays a prominent role when an animal is seeking a nutrient that is difficult to identify: protein. Junglefowl chicks are reluctant to eat mealworms when they first encounter them, unless they are presented by a mother hen making the food call. There is an extensive amount of information to learn about both the benefits and the dangers of different plant species. Black bear expert Ben Killam, who has rewilded hundreds of orphaned cubs, explains. Normally, their mother introduces typical foods, situations, and dangers to them. If you go walking with cubs, you see they want information. Some plants are poisonous. What's good? Youngsters learn what their teachers know. And their cultural knowledge varies between groups and individuals. Researchers found that orangutans of Tanjung Puting in Borneo use more than 300 different food types. However, the dietary profiles of different orangutan populations may vary greatly. Young orangutans' diets will match those of their mothers, but differ from those of neighbors. Diets were essentially identical to their mothers, even though not all mothers had the same diet. Chimpanzees may eat more than 300 different food types. Fruit alone is taken from 114 different plants. They have to learn how to master food preparation. This mastery includes avoiding the numerous plant parts that are toxic, selecting relatively nutritious options, and avoiding relatively poor ones. In food selected among many hundreds of potential food types available, they learn more than 30 different kinds of tool use, ascribed to culture. Chimpanzee communities resemble human cultures in possessing suites of local traditions that uniquely identify them. Some chimpanzee populations have learned to track the progress of dozens of specific trees ripening in their dense forests. Others live in open semi-savanna. Years of close apprenticeship to a mother who daily displays her knowledge of such a large but selective diet set likely provide an important means of achieving an adaptive response to this challenging complexity. This complex knowledge of different plant species is found across many different species. Sheep can categorize plants at the species level and can classify food items at an even higher level. They are able to create a hierarchical representation of food categories in much the same way chimpanzees have been shown to classify flowers. A number of studies show how sheep learn to discriminate between different edible plants using mental categorization. They can also use their ability to discriminate tastes to self-medicate when they are ill and teach their young to do the same. Sea otters learn a foraging specialty from their mother and keep it lifelong. Animals learn not just what foods to eat, but also how to prepare them using the same techniques their parents use. birds have to learn how to open nuts. By holding the nut with their feet and hammering it with their beak until it opens. Shorebirds called oyster catchers specialize in either stabbing or hammering open mussels. Chicks whose parents stab mussels develop the stabbing technique. Those whose parents hammer mussels hammer them. Different groups of animals use different techniques, eat different diets, and have different prey preferences, even in environments where the same foods are available. Researchers observed complex feeding habits socially transmitted by Norway rats. They found that some groups eat mollusks that they dive for at the bottom of the river, while other groups don't. There are also different modes of opening the shells that differ from colony to colony. Socially acquired techniques result in considerable time and energy savings for black rats, extracting seeds from pine cones. Black rat pups learn the efficient cone stripping technique by stealing partially open cones from their mothers. The invention and spread of this technique has allowed black rats to invade newly planted pine forests in Israel, opening up a previously unexploited niche. Information is shared with the colony and frequently updated. Wild Norway rats are social, central place foragers. Each rat lives as a member of a colony, inhabiting a fixed system of burrows from which colony members emerge to forage and to which they subsequently return. Researchers demonstrated that one Norway rat can communicate to another information concerning food it has eaten at a distant site. The results of the present experiments demonstrate that adult rats can exchange information concerning ingested foods at a time and place distant from the ingestion site. As environments change, new discoveries or innovations are shared and spread quickly, becoming new culture. This phenomenon has been demonstrated by researchers. Foraging innovations have been recorded close to their inception, and their spread then recorded. A review of 30 studies reported evidence of cultural spread of foraging techniques in mammals, birds, fish, and insects. In one compelling example, the unusual skill of pulling string to access food in an artificial flower was seeded in individual bumblebees, and then tracked as the skill subsequently spread via observational learning across the hive, simulating transmission from bee to bee across 4 such cultural generations. The cultural diffusion of a novel food-finding behavior was demonstrated in pigeons who learned to pierce the paper cover of a box containing seed. In the urban flock, piercing behavior spread to 24 previously naive individuals. It doesn't take long for a new discovery to spread. Birds show others how to open bins, how to crack nuts with traffic, use motion sensors to open doors, and take the lids off milk bottles. Knowledge of new water or food sources also spreads quickly. Animals learn the locations of farms, plantations, and crop fields, and even change their migration routes accordingly. Young male elephants learn crop raiding techniques from experienced older males. Intentional crop raiding is seen across the species. Chimps who live in sight of human settlements have learned to crop raid at night. Animals don't just have to learn what to eat, but also what not to eat. They teach their young how to avoid poisonous foods. Animals learn about different poisons, and the knowledge spreads. In colonies of wild rats, if certain poisons are used in one area over time, later acceptance of poison remains low, as survivors of offspring refuse to accept poison bait. Researchers showed that birds can learn what not to eat just by watching each other's reactions, even on video. They can learn by watching videos of other birds expressing disgust after eating certain prey. The knowledge of plant species in the animal kingdom extends beyond nutritional. Animals use different plant species for their secondary non-nutritional compounds. Plants that are toxic in large doses can be used in small doses for medicinal purposes. Long before human pharmacology emerged, animals began to utilize the chemical defenses of plants to protect themselves from their own predators and parasites. Animals, too, learn about the details of self-medication by watching each other. It is likely that the origins of herbal medicine have their roots deep within the animal kingdom. From prehistoric times, man has looked to wild and domestic animals for sources of herbal remedies. More than 2,400 years ago, the Greeks learned to use extracts of several native willow species to treat pain, gout, and other illnesses. Aspirin is the pharmaceutical equivalent of willow bark tea, which is an effective remedy. Animals seek out willow bark when they are unwell. Rabbits and many ungulates, including deer, moose, and elk, browse on willow twigs, foliage, and bark. Animals use plants for their variety of effects, from pain-relieving to psychoactive. Their culture of medicine essentially extends to recreational drug culture. Animals across the species use a variety of plants and other substances for no other reason but to alter their consciousness. Using substances such as lichen, locoweed, opium, magic mushrooms, and DMT. They also use alcohol found in fermented fruits and tree saps. Chimpanzees even make tools in the form of leaf sponges to access the fermented sap that collects in palm trees. Just as with medicinal plants, some animals may have introduced humans to a number of drugs, including psychedelic mushrooms, alcohol, caffeine, and cocaine,